Hello, my name is Liael, or Caffeine and Misery, and today, with the release of Omniscient Awakening 2 weeks ago, we've gotten a couple of new decks. A lot of upgrades, but today I'm going to be talking about the brand new Destined One of Time Liael Odium. So for those of you who don't know, if you can't tell by the playmat, one of my favorite clans is Angel Feather, but when I actually got into Vanguard, I started with Gear Chronicles. So both Amorta and Odium are very special to me with their designs and like the aesthetics. But let's go ahead, let's get into the card by card, start talking about it. For the ride line, you're obviously on the original Odium ride line. The grade 1 that does the same thing as Impaldio's actually. You reveal the correct grade 3 Vanguard in your ride deck, and you get a little set order token that gives you a gauge. It gives you this Destined timepiece, which does a lot less compared to the system code Exceed. It just lets you have the gauge and locks you into the Odium. But that's all it needs to do. The grade 2, when it rides over the grade 1, you put a card from hand face up as a regress gauge, and then you get to draw 2. It's hand filling, you start setting up your regress gauge so that by the time you're on your Persona ride turn, you're at the necessary number for Liael, who, during your turn, as long as you have... during your turn for every Distorted Bane, which is an order we'll be getting to once we hit the main deck, for each one in your regress gauge, your front row gets 5k, so she's always buffing everyone, similar to the way the Stride deck crests work for how many face-up G units. On attack, by Soul Blasting 1 and either putting a card from rare or her hand into regress, she gains triple drive. She does gain the keyword triple drive, so things like Sanctitude still work on her. And then her Divine Skill, at the end of the battle she attacked, if you have 5 or more regress by discarding 2 cards from hand, you will be getting an extra turn at the end. So think of it as a more consistent form of, I believe it should be Mystery Flare Dragon, the Stride unit that reveal the top 4 so you can skip a turn. Of course, she is a lot more restricted on that because you skip the ride in main phase, so you get to stand and draw, you don't get energy, and you go directly to battle. But that should hopefully be perfectly fine. Let's get into the main deck now. Obviously, I'm on 3 copies of the Persona ride. The main way you're going to be trying to do this is by your Persona ride turn, hitting 5 regress gauge, Persona ride, swing, Divine Skill, and hopefully with 6 attacks and your opponent not having a draw, getting the chance to draw in between, you'll be able to swing. You'll be able to swing in and hit for lethal. Along the 3 Persona rides, I'm on 4 copies of Anachronous Dragon, which while in the gauge zone, while it's in your regress gauge, at being a battle, you can counterblast 1 and put a card from drop into regress gauge, and if you do, you can call this one. This is not Liael restricted, this is not grade restricted. So on your grade 2 turn, you can put him into regress, and then at start a battle, counterblast 1, put a different card from your drop in, and then you have a grade 3 beater. So your opponent's gonna have a little bit of a tougher time guarding, especially if you hit a trigger. All of that, the other skill it has is when it attacks, if you're on a Liael, it gets +5, and then if you have 3 or more regress, you get a +2 to retire a unit, so it's a little bit of removal, it's a bigger beater. And then it's mentioned directly in the text of Liael, but we have the order for the deck, Distorted Bane. It's grade 3 order that you can only play if you are on Liael Odium. Liael in general, actually, so hypothetically, if we get like Cross Nation support, you can use this. But as a very simple effect, you may soul charge 1, it's not mandatory, and then you put it into regress. And then when it's put into regress gauge, it does not have to be put by its own ability, it can be put by Odium's skill or Anachronous Dragon's skill. You draw a card and give your Vanguard 10k. So the turn, your first grade 3 turn, when you use it, you're setting your Vanguard to 28. You know, the stride number. It's cute. I like the little bits of like, hey. I think they're cute. Anyways, for grade 2s, I'm on 3 copies of Almanac Colossus, which on place, as long as you have a regress gauge, you counterblast 1, draw 1, and soul charge 1. And then if you have 3 or more regress, it gets boost, so it becomes a 10k booster. Also on 3 copies of Steam Burner, or Dataha? I hope I said that right. And on this unit has a very simple skill 2, on place or when put to regress, you choose one of your units, give 5k. She has a nice, simple beater at 2. She's an intercept, and she helps buff your other units. For non-archetypal, I'm on 3 copies of Famed Blazing Demonic Lady Orions. This is the Dark State's equivalent to Teeth Fault, because when she is placed, as long as it's not by a unit skill, and you played an order that turn, you can Soul Blast 1, check the top 5, either call a unit or add a normal unit or normal order to hand, and then you shuffle. Then on attack, as long as she's attacking on grade 3 or greater unit, for a Soul Blast cost of 3, so it's a little steep, I'm not gonna lie. But you get to draw a card, and then she gets an extra 5. She's mainly here for board building, searching deeper for other copies of Distort Bane, and generally just being like, oh, it's late game, I'm out of units, let's get more. The Soul Blast 3 draw card plus 5 doesn't really come up that much in my experience. Anyways, lastly, for grade 2s, I'm on 4 copies of BlueSky Thunderquaking Queen Lamina, which is the first discard to draw cycler for Dark States from all the way back in set 12 of Overdress. Yes, because it's got 2 abilities as the skill that all those cyclers have, where when it's discarded for a Soul Blast and bottom decking it, you draw a card. And then when placed on rare from hand, as long as you Persona Road this turn, for a counterblast, you get to call a card from Soul, and then you get the option to Soul Charge 1. That is not mandatory. So if you decide to Soul Charge off of the Distort Bane, you Soul Charge a unit you want, you just get to call it out. For grade 1s, I'm on 2 copies of Ablaze Chimera, who on place, if you're on a grade 3 Liael, for a counterblast, you can check the top 5 and call a rearguard. It's just another 2 copies of Orions, but for a counterblast cost. I'm on 1 copy of Avarice Rester, who for a discard lets you search for an order, and then you discard it, and it gets the skill that you can play it from drop, and when it be played, it will be put on bottom of deck. However, because of the way Distort Bane works, Distort Bane will put itself in the regress gauge, so it will not be sent to drop. Because the way playing Gorgeous work is really weird. So he's just copy number 5 of Distort Bane. I'm on 3 Brainwash Swirler. That way you can build up a little bit of soul, actually sometimes get use out of the Orions. Make sure you have some for your Odium ability if you've been seeing your Laminas consistently. On place, it soul charges 1, and then every time you soul charge 1, if your opponent's if you're on grade 3, it gets 5k for each card soul charged. So pretty fast you'll be able to make it like an 18k booster. And then lastly, I'm on Sentinels. For my trigger lineup, I'm on 7 criticals. I'm on 4 draws because you want to be seeing your different combo pieces. You want to be seeing your Distort Bane and Anachnus Dragons. So I personally feel like the draw triggers are mandatory. You're already getting enough pressure and enough field pressure off of having Distort Banes in regress off of Odium skill, so you don't really need to be you don't really need to worry as much about fronts. 4 heals, and then The OT I'm on the Dark States OT right now. I'm still testing which one I like the most. I think personally right now, I'm more into using Nyx Azalea, if I'm being completely honest. I think Nyx Azalea is the best one for this. I think that's the name. The purple OT that lets you add a card from damage to hand and then call it. But that's just me. Test it out, mess around. I just kind of want to talk about my list for this deck. And if you guys enjoyed it, please do all the YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, all that jazz. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Ciao.